Welcome to another edition of the magazine. Today we have with us Chris Keene, who has done something that many people have always dreamed of doing. But we'd like to welcome Chris to the show. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I appreciate you being interested in doing a show on me.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating. So you have hiked
Yes.
the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
That is an amazing feat in itself.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to get into that story, but what is some history of the Appalachian Trail?
So back in around 1927, a gentleman by the name of Benton Mackay conceived of the idea while sitting on a mountain in the southern end of the Long Trail in Vermont, and looking out, and came inspired to decide he would like to do a trail that went from the very beginning of the Appalachian Mountains and went to the northern end. They're the oldest mountains, so okay. Yeah, and so he thought that would be a good idea, and he had other ideas as far as how it would be used. It wasn't intended to be a thru-hiking adventure. It was supposed to be for people of locality to be able to use it as a place to recreate and just get away for a little bit, and of course it changed as time went on. So, and then after that, it was completed around 1947. And that's what.
So it's been here for a while.
Yes, it has. Yes, exactly. Yep.
So what inspired you to hike the Appalachian Trail?
Well, I had read the book, which is by Bryson, A Walk in the Woods. Okay. And I didn't really think about doing the trail, but then my cousin and his wife did it, and I started hiking, and at some point with my daughter and a friend of mine, we were doing the 48 4000s in New Hampshire, and I said to Bob, hey, if I do all these mountains, would I be basically, prepared to do the trail? And he said, absolutely. And of course, he didn't mention it, but New Hampshire is one of the most difficult parts of the trail. It's known to be. So, if you can, do your thing there, you're pretty much ready to go. So after that, I just continued to hike, and I had to bide my time till when I had an opportunity where I could actually do the hike. So, but that's why I wanted to do it. He inspired me. Okay. Yeah.
So you said you had to take some time. How long did it take you to do the trail itself?
It was 6 months. It was I started on March 7th from Amicalola Falls in Georgia, and then it was September 7th that I completed it by summiting Mount Katahdin in Maine.
How were you able to take 6 months out of your life to do this?
Well, it was almost the same amount of time as it took for me to think of doing it and to complete it, which is because my family and I owned a store in Fairhaven. We had a liquor store. And after 26 years, we sold it. Okay. And so instead of me going to work immediately, I took some time off for myself. I hadn't really had vacations or anything. And then this March is when I started. I wanted to do it northbound, so it was a good time to do it in March. And you walk with spring, more or less, for a good part of the way before it gets too hot, And so that's how I was able to do it. Was having that, not being connected to my job, and I had saved some money to do the trip.
So you prepared.
Yes, absolutely.
So speaking of preparation, you mentioned that you did hiking before with your daughter and everything. But how did you prepare for this 6-month journey?
Okay, so I know very well from reading and videos on YouTube and stuff like that you really get your conditioning as you go on the trail. So what happens is that I was more concerned about my gear and it being compatible with my body, and so I started using Shore Road, the trail down there off of the bike path. Yep. It's about 4 miles back and forth. I'd go 3 times. I'd go 1, 2, 3 times. Do like 12 miles a day. I did that for several months, and just for cardiovascular more than anything, and just like I said, getting used to the pack. That I was going to be using for this journey. So that's how I did it. I didn't have time, or it's a long story, but I really didn't have the time to get up to New Hampshire on a regular basis to where I would get the kind of climbing legs I really needed. I knew that I would develop them over time. So that's what I did. I just kind of prepared and just take it as it comes when I get on trail. So that was how I went about that. And I have plenty of experience backcountry hiking and camping. So again, it was just the physical part that I had to build up for, and I would do it naturally as I went along.
Sure.
Yeah, it's typical of a method of doing it. So
okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back to that first day in March.
Yeah.
And it's the beginning.
Yep.
Describe that day.
Oh my God. Okay, so that day, the night prior, I got to Amicalola Falls. It's a state forest, and it has the approach trail, which is 8.5 miles, and then you summit Springer Mountain, the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. So I slept in a shelter. It was my first shelter, it was cool. I made friends with a couple other people that were also doing the hike, and so I left first, and it was really weird because everybody has this like machismo, I don't know, like everybody wants to be like tough, and they're not trying to like connect friendship wise so much. They want to be, I'm going on the trail, I'm alone, and I knew different. I know that you need people. And so anyway, I left, and the first part of this trail is all stairs. I mean, hundreds of them going up the highest. Yeah, it's the highest waterfall in the state of Georgia, and it's huge. And this is just for like tourists to go up, But now I got my pack on and everything I'm going to use, and it weighs a lot considering what I've been doing for the last 20 years,
Sure.
And so I scale these stairs and I get on the trail, and now I'm on a ridge that leads to basically to Springer Mountain, and it's a beautiful trail. And as I'm going along, I meet two young guys, and they're sitting down on a rock, a big rock, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" They said, "Good." I said, "Oh, you guys are going to do the trail?" They're like, "Yeah." So they were from Baltimore. They were brothers, and we chit-chatted for a little bit, and I left, and they stayed there. They were still like kind of, they were sweating. They were having a hard time. So I make it to the end of that approach trail, and there's a shelter there, and I intended on sleeping there for that night, and the next morning get up early, summit Springer, and then continue on my way. Well, these guys come along, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to do it now. You want to go with me?" I said, "All right." So we left, and did it together, the three of us, and it started raining. Well, it rained cats and dogs, and we made it to the first shelter. After the summit of Springer, we went and we got to a shelter and got out of the rain and everything. And I'm still friends with them to this day. They're great. They didn't make it. They did not, incidentally, make the whole trip. So, which was, kind of lousy, but they are my first friends, and they'll always be, So.
That's a great beginning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a great beginning. So tell us how a typical day was after that.
Okay, so I got going on the trail, and as you go along, you start to meet people, and only a couple of weeks later, just to say this ahead of time, is that we had like a really bad storm, and everybody had to kind of get off trail.
Okay.
And people think Georgia, it's got to be warm. No, it's very cold. It's mountains and all that. So it's in the western part of the state, so it's not like real warm. So anyway, every day I'd get up, I started hiking, and you slowly make friends with people who are going at the speed you're going at, okay? And so because you're of like physical means, you kind of inevitably go to the same spot when you're done hiking for the day, and so forth. So that was what was going on. I was moving along fine, and then the storm came along, and one of the people that I made friends with that was of like speed rented a cabin. And it was, I'm trying to think, Mountain Crossings is the name of the area where it was. And so we went in there, several of us, we pitched in for this cabin, and we were there for 2 days. It rained and froze. I mean, we had icicles that big when we went back on trail. It was crazy, yeah. But while I was in there, there was like this nestled out thing with a bunch of cabins in it. And this one guy was inviting people over to his cabin to just chill out and talk hiking and stuff. He was an older guy. Turns out he's a couple of years older than me. I wasn't sure how old he was, but at the time. But anyway, I went in there, and he gave me a lot of good advice about hiking. He had a lot of experience, and he had tried to hike the trail in 2020, but because of COVID, he got, we had to leave. So anyway, we made friends a little bit, and then it was time to go back out hiking, and I did, and I kind of went out on my own, and I was just hiking along, and one day I was sitting on a rock in an area where a convergence of a couple of trails, just taking a break, just chilling out, And along comes the guy with the other cabin, Dreamer, that's his name.
Yeah.
And we started hiking, and we ended up doing over 2,000 miles together.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's the type of thing every day that you have. You meet people all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you said you carry a lot of your gear in your backpack, but
Yes.
How do you eat? Like, where do you find food?
So what you do is you usually go in and out of town like every 3 to 4 days.
Okay.
And the shorter the period of time, believe it or not, is the more efficient way to do it, because food is your enemy, because you can never get enough of it, and it weighs a ton.
Sure.
And just think about it when you go grocery shopping. You take a couple of bags in your hand, and they're heavy. Now you're putting them into your pack, and you're going up and down mountains all day. I mean, literally 4 or 5,000 foot mountains every day. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's a lot of weight. So you go in and out. You have what's called it used to be called Gut Hook. It's got another name now, but it's a software, and it tells you where you are at all times.
Okay.
And what happens is that on it also tells you where the next place into town would be. Mm-hmm. It gives you some data on what they have there, like if they have grocery stores or if it's just gas stations. But you live out of that stuff. You either go to gas stations. They know that you want this stuff, so they'll have it on hand.
Oh, okay.
And you eat, like ramen noodle, which everybody uses, mashed potatoes, instant mashed potatoes, okay. Packages of tuna fish, packages of chicken, that they make like for making a sandwich or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, there's a thing called a ramen bomb, which is you boil water, put a ramen pack in it, and then when that's ready, then you put like a whole pack of mashed potatoes in that, and then you put 1 or 2 packs of tuna, and maybe a quarter of a block of cheese, and that's your supper.
Okay.
Yeah, because you end up in a situation like I was in. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but one day I woke up and I had lost 25 pounds basically.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I lost a lot of weight because I'm not a big guy, and you find out that you have to eat. Like, I didn't have my hiker hunger at that time, so I wasn't consuming it
sure
enough in anticipation of that, So Dreamer was with the software. He was the navigator a lot of times. Not that I couldn't do it, but he just liked doing that. Yeah. And he'd be like, okay, we're going to be coming up on a gap, and there's a place we can buy a hamburger, like within a quarter of a mile. We'll run and get something to eat and go back out on trail or whatever, just to get extra calories.
Sure.
And so because of him, I started to build up again, and he taught me some other things. We started drinking protein drinks. We would have the protein sent to his wife, and then she would break it up for us into bags and send it to post offices ahead of us.
Oh, okay.
And
right.
we would have that. So like in the morning, it would be peanut butter powder, okay, protein, and an instant coffee and just shake it up, put it in water and shake it up and just sip that as we were breaking our camp down. Okay. And that was our could get going kind of fuel, Sure. And so that was another thing that really helped me to get some weight back, Yeah. I never did though. I mean, when I got done, again looking ahead, but when I got off of Katahdin, I mean, I had nothing, like not an ounce of fat on my body.
Sure,
I mean, it was just crazy. But I had some weight back on, so.
Well, that's nutrition is very important. That's why I'm just curious too,
sure.
And I'm sure our viewers are curious too.
Sure.
Were there water stops along the way? I mean, how did you get water? Because I'm sure that you needed to consume a lot of water. Yeah.
So water is so funny because after you get going for a little while, it's just second nature. But you have a water filter, and first of all, you become a mountaineer, and you know where to look for water, but streams and stuff. But you look for good stuff. There's a way you get an eye for what's a good place to drink water from, and springs. Actual springs will just be coming right out of the side of the berm on the side of the trail, and you just collect your water right there.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and you drink lots of water. You actually comment on the quality. Everybody, wow, that's good water. You'll have sometimes just taste so good, Yeah. And so that, and I'll say this, it's the same thing as going to the bathroom. You're just hiking along, all of a sudden you got to go to the bathroom. You just go to the bathroom. Yeah. It's so different than being in society.
Right.
It's really, really cool.
About how many miles did you do a day?
Okay, so that's a good question. So when I started, by direction from all I'd read and what I'd seen on YouTube and stuff, I started doing about 8 miles a day.
Okay.
And, you know, it sounds like, wow, you got 2,000 something miles to go and you're only going 8 miles, but, you know, you make up for it as it goes along. So it was like 8 miles, and then it was 12, and then 15. I remember my first 20-mile day was in the Smoky Mountains, and that was only like maybe, I think it was probably about a month and a half later that we were in the Smokies, and I did my first 20-mile day. So you quickly build up, you know.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so it was amazing. I can only tell you that because I enjoyed the 20 and plus mile days because I would lay in my sleeping bag at night and try and remember all the people that you meet. Now, they're mostly hiker type people, but just the people that you met while you're hiking, you know, and all the things you saw and stuff like that. It's just mind-boggling. 20 miles is from here to Fall River.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's amazing.
Yeah. So besides that initial storm in Georgia,
yes,
any other unusual encounters?
Yes. Okay. As first of all, in storm-wise, I want to mention this, that we were in a place called Hot Springs, which is in Virginia, and it was about 80-something degrees. We're like, here comes summer, right? The next day, we start having snow. And we had, I mean, it was like a blizzard. I don't know exactly how many inches we got, but it was enough that it was, you know, kind of scary a little bit, you know. And we had to traverse this mountain because you don't stop because of that stuff. You still keep going. That's just the way it is. So, you know, we're hiking, and we got to traverse this mountain, and there's a bypass that you can take to avoid this area on the top of the mountain when there's bad weather. They don't all have it, but for some reason this one did. Mm-hmm. But we went over the top, and Dreamer was ahead of me, and he had his dog with him at the time. He brought his dog for part of the trail. Okay. And it was raining snowing so heavy, I lost his footprint. So I'm hiking up, and I'm trying to get over this mountain, and as I'm up there looking around for the right, you know, way to go, mm-hmm. I hear a voice. And it turns out to be somebody that also became a lifelong friend, mm-hmm. which was a woman, and she was up there kind of, not disoriented, but she just didn't know where she was going, kind of. It's hard to explain, but mm-hmm. because it was blowing snow and all that. Right. And so anyhow, we got down and got out of it. You know, it was just an amazing thing. It was fun. You know, it was a challenge, and it was, you know, it was a little bit sketchy, but fun.
That's an adventure in an adventure.
Yes. And then as far as unusual things, like, here's another example of some things that you would see on the trail. There is a lot of history. There are, like I say, a lot of ghosts, okay? You go along, and all of a sudden, you start seeing multiple in line. You'll see, I mean, massive old oak trees lining both sides of a trail, but set back, okay? And you realize you're on what used to be sort of like a dirt road, and on both sides behind these oak trees, you're seeing like heirloom apple trees and stuff like that. And this is what people used to live at, like 5,000 feet back in the day before the government like bought all the land off of them at one point, you know. And so one day, further on down the trail, but in Virginia, which is the largest length of the trail, it's Virginia, it's like over 500 miles of the Appalachian Trail is in Virginia. But I'm going along at about 5,000 feet on a ridge, and it's a beautiful, the flowers are out and everything, and there's cows up there, because some people still own some of this land up there. Sure. And so this guy had his cows up there grazing, you know, and they were just, I had to, you know, get between them. They were just free range, you know, and I just loved it. It's just amazing. And that was the other thing. We had a lot of contact with agriculture. Sure. Because the trail would go through cow pastures and stuff like that, and it was just so nice to be in touch with, you know, just the natural ways of life, the things that you take for granted when you pick up a package of hamburger at the grocery store. Well, this is where it comes from, you know? Yeah, exactly. Kind of nice.
So those are excellent points, and I want to get to the best part of your trip. But what was the most difficult part of your journey?
I would have to say that there were 3 spots, all right? But the first spot we encountered would have been Pennsylvania. Okay. And Pennsylvania leads into Delaware Water Gap, okay? And then from there, you're in New Jersey. But no, New York. You're in New York. But there's a phenomenon in the northern part of New Jersey, of Pennsylvania, where there are tons of rocks. And I cannot explain to you exactly what they're like, but understand this. There's all different types, but there's these rocks that stick out of the ground about this much.
Wow.
They're about like this. They can be round. They're not necessarily sharp, but there's only a small gap between them. So typically you are basically walking on them, or if you walk between them, you have to be very aware that if you slip, you could break your ankle. Mm-hmm. So there's all these things, and it is just, I can't tell you how much it wears on you. So one night, it was about 6 o'clock, and I was heading to where we were going to camp for the night. We never used shelters. They were there. We used them in bad weather, like real bad weather. Yeah. But and I'll tell you about that in a minute too, but this was just an authorized campsite.
Okay.
And so I'm heading there, and Dreamer's ahead of me, and my other friend, Pyro, they're ahead of me. And as we go along, I trip, and I fall. I put my hand out, and all these rocks are all in the path, the trail. And I ended up dislocating this finger. And because I was trying to protect my face, you know what I mean? Yeah. And this stuff happened a lot. You fall. It's just, it sounds crazy, but it happens, you know? So that was the toughest part for the beginning. But the two places after that were difficult were in New Hampshire, all of it. I can't believe it. I did all the 48 4000s and never did those particular trails on most of the parts I'm thinking about, because there's more than one way to summit a mountain sometimes. Sure. And I would take the easier way at the time, you know. Mm-hmm. But it was very difficult. And the culmination of that in New Hampshire was Mount Washington. We summited on August 4th, my birthday. We came down, and the trail goes north, and it wraps around the northern northern presidentials. And you summit Mount Madison. When you come down, there's the Osgood Trail, and that was brutal. And this is after all the rubble you walk over. Like everything in the White Mountains is rubble. Mm-hmm. You know, it's brutal on your knees and everything. And again, you could have a trail ending, a hike ending injury if you're not careful. Right. And as you get tired, you make mistakes. So that was tough. And then Mount Katahdin was just a beast.
Really?
Absolute beast. Mm-hmm. Yep. And we summited with our full packs, and we came down the Knife's Edge, which is another whole crazy hike, mm-hmm. and onto the Helon Trail, and that was crazy too. Wow. Yep.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
So those are challenges,
yes.
Real challenges.
Yes.
And but what are some of the rewards? What are some of the rewarding parts of the hike? Besides the whole hike itself?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things. One is, that personal achievement, like mm-hmm. in that moment. I would say that since, I did it, I was with, my buddy Dreamer the whole time, and in the end, my buddy Alley Cat. It's a team. We're
Sure.
a team. We support each other. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just a nice way of knowing there are people out there that can get together and do things and, you know what I mean, and achieve goals. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I really like that. It's just a very powerful thing. So, and that's on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And then, the other parts of it would be that, the views you have, the things, eating wild cranberries, eating wild blueberries, all of it. Crazy. Yep. Really, really nice.
So what was it like on the final day? You've achieved your goal. You've reached your destination. Yeah. You've reached the end of the Appalachian Trail.
It was amazing. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. Sure. It doesn't hit you right away.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So I left there. My parents picked me up, and we have a place in Maine. So we went there, and I just chilled for the day. The next day we came home, and it started to hit me on the drive home. But it's just I can't explain it. It's just too much.
Sure.
I'm still dealing with it. my legs will not heal till December.
Really?
Roughly, yeah. The muscles and everything. There's still a lot of pain, you know.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
But your family, your community, everyone's so proud of you. You know, not. I don't know anyone else that can say that they've hiked the Appalachian Trail, but now I know one of my neighbors hiked the Appalachian Trail, so it's great. This is awesome.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for saying that, Charlie.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I don't mean to be crying. It's just
yeah. You did an amazing feat that, like I said, I don't know anyone else has. So it should bring about a lot of emotions because you worked really hard at it. You achieved your goal, you know, and I think that it's an amazing thing. And I know our community wants to know. That's why we're having the show on you, because our community wants to know how could someone physically do that?
Yep.
And you've proven that it can be done.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I would say the last thing is, if you're ever going to do it, buy a one-way ticket. Don't get a return trip. Walk it.
Walk it. That's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
So what's next?
First a marathon.
Okay.
And then PCT. I'll do that in a couple of years.
What's PCT?
Pacific Crest Trail.
Okay.
Yep. That'll be next. That's bigger. It's 2,600 miles.
Okay.
But it's different. The Appalachian Trail is the most difficult trail of the three big ones, which is the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. But I do want to do the PCT next. It's 2,600 miles. Okay. It entails, the desert for around, I think, 500 miles, 300 or 500 miles, and then it's, the Sierra Nevadas. I'm sorry, the Sierras. And then it goes into Oregon, the Cascades, and then into, into Washington, I should say. It's quite a hike. It's from Mexico to Canada, yeah. So.
Well, if anyone can do it, it's you.
I hope so. Yep.
So, Chris, I just want to thank you so much for coming on our show and describing your journey and your incredible spirit to make this journey come to fruition. So, thank you for being on our show.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I appreciate that very much. And thank you, Dave, also for making this happen too. Dave Fauteux, he's a great guy and also a great neighbor. We're all neighbors, and that's what I like. Yeah. It is so awesome.
That's great.
And I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Charlie.